What if the miracles that left prophets in awe and shaped entire generations actually have scientific echoes we are only beginning to grasp? Could the burning bush that did not consume itself be more than a supernatural event, perhaps a glimpse of divine power working through unknown laws of nature? This journey invites you to explore the possibility that miracles are not suspensions of natural law, but revelations of a divine science far beyond our comprehension. Here, science does not diminish the power of God, it magnifies it. Are miracles unexplained phenomena, or are they carefully orchestrated signs of a creator who governs both the visible and the invisible? Prepare to question what you know, as we explore how the supernatural and the scientific might coexist in perfect harmony. In the beginning, there was not only light, there was order. Genesis opens with a divine voice calling the universe into existence, "Let there be light." But what if those words were more than poetic? What if they marked the activation of time, space, gravity, and energy, the very principles that science now struggles to fully define? From the vastness of galaxies to the design of a single cell, every element of creation echoes patterns, logic, and precision. Could it be that what we call the laws of nature are, in fact, the fingerprints of the Creator himself? The same God who formed the heavens also defined the physics that hold them together. This idea challenges us to view science not as a rival to faith, but as a reflection of divine intelligence, a window into how God operates in both the natural and the miraculous. Beneath the surface of every miracle lies a web of natural law, laws which God authored, commands, and transcends. When Moses stood before the burning bush, he encountered a fire that behaved in ways fire never should. Was it an anomaly in the fabric of physics? Or was it a glimpse into a layer of reality where God suspends, or rather, expands, natural law for a divine purpose? The flame that burned without consuming may seem impossible to us, yet in a universe built by a limitless creator, is anything truly impossible? God's creation includes not just matter and energy, but the rules that govern them. And he alone holds the authority to bend them. Modern science has identified constants that maintain balance, the speed of light, the strength of gravity, the precision of atomic bonds. These constants are so finely tuned that many physicists describe the universe as intelligently designed. But what if that intelligence is not anonymous? What if it bears the name of God? The same creator who separated land from sea also shaped neurons in the human brain and programmed the DNA code. These are not accidents of chance, they are divine calculations. If we accept that creation follows a brilliant logic, then science becomes a form of worship, revealing the structure of a universe built by eternal wisdom. When we explore the depths of oceans or the stars of distant galaxies, we are not wandering through chaos, we are walking through a carefully designed masterpiece. Each natural law we discover is a revelation, not of randomness, but of purpose. The fire in the bush was not chaotic, it was controlled, designed to captivate, to speak, to call. Perhaps God doesn't break the laws of nature in miracles, perhaps he simply reveals more of them, layers not yet accessible to human understanding. And in doing so, he invites us to expand our view of reality itself. So, is science the opposite of faith? Or is it the language through which God wrote the universe? The more we understand the natural world, the more we begin to see patterns that whisper of something greater. Of someone greater. The miracle of creation is not just that it exists, but that it functions with such beauty, symmetry, and logic. In that harmony lies the true miracle, that the divine and the scientific are not separate realms, but united reflections of a God whose wisdom is infinite and whose power is both spiritual and structural. 2. Throughout Scripture, the miracles of God stand as awe-inspiring moments that defy human logic, waters parting, the dead rising, food multiplying. Yet, as science advances, some scholars and theologians have begun to ask, what if these miracles are not violations of nature, but expressions of it at its highest level? Could God, the author of the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, be using his own systems to manifest divine will? This idea does not weaken faith, it intensifies it. For it suggests that God's miracles are not arbitrary interruptions but precise activations. Acts where the natural and the divine intersect with perfect timing and purpose. Take, for instance, the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus. Traditional belief views it as an outright suspension of natural law, waters dividing by sheer divine will. However, some scientists have proposed that a strong wind set down in just the right way could temporarily push back shallow waters. Does this explanation strip the moment of its power? Or does it deepen the mystery, that God timed the event so precisely that a natural force became the vehicle for a supernatural deliverance? The miracle lies not in the mechanism, but in the moment, the exactness with which God moves creation to fulfill his purpose. Consider Jesus turning water into wine at Cana. Chemistry tells us wine requires fermentation, enzymes, yeast, time. Yet in one moment, jars of water became fine wine. To science, this is impossible. But what if Jesus, the Word through whom all things were made, simply accelerated a process he himself designed? If he authored the molecular structures of water and grape, why could he not instantly rearrange them? The miracle remains, not because it lacks scientific explanation, but because it reveals the hand of God working beyond our timeline, collapsing processes into a single divine moment. The feeding of the 5,000 is another example. With 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus feeds a multitude. This event has sparked both skepticism and reverence. Could there have been hidden food? A massive sharing effort sparked by a child's offering? Perhaps. But again, the power of the miracle is not diminished by possible mechanisms. If God used spontaneous biological multiplication or altered the perception of hunger, the core truth remains: divine compassion moved through physical means to meet human need. God's touch transforms not only what is present, but how it is experienced. The miracles in the Bible, when viewed through the lens of science, invite a powerful reflection: God is not limited to the spiritual realm. He moves through molecules, storms, atoms, and time itself. And while science may one day offer plausible mechanisms, it will never capture the full essence of divine intention. In every miracle, it is the presence of God that matters most, not the method, but the message, that he is near, active, and sovereign over both the laws he created and the lives he redeems. Throughout Scripture, the miracles of God stand as awe-inspiring moments that defy human logic: waters parting, the dead rising, food multiplying. Yet, as science advances, some scholars and theologians have begun to ask, what if these miracles are not violations of nature, but expressions of it at its highest level? Could God, the author of the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, be using his own systems to manifest divine will? This idea does not weaken faith, it intensifies it. For it suggests that God's miracles are not arbitrary interruptions but precise activations, acts where the natural and the divine intersect with perfect timing and purpose. Take, for instance, the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus. Traditional belief views it as an outright suspension of natural law, waters dividing by sheer divine will. However, some scientists have proposed that a strong wind set down in just the right way could temporarily push back shallow waters. Does this explanation strip the moment of its power? Or does it deepen the mystery, that God timed the event so precisely that a natural force became the vehicle for a supernatural deliverance? The miracle lies not in the mechanism, but in the moment, the exactness with which God moves creation to fulfill his purpose. Consider Jesus turning water into wine at Cana. Chemistry tells us wine requires fermentation, enzymes, yeast, time. Yet in one moment, jars of water became fine wine. To science, this is impossible. But what if Jesus, the Word through whom all things were made, simply accelerated a process he himself designed? If he authored the molecular structures of water and grape, why could he not instantly rearrange them? The miracle remains, not because it lacks scientific explanation, but because it reveals the hand of God working beyond our timeline, collapsing processes into a single divine moment. The feeding of the 5,000 is another example. With 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus feeds a multitude. This event has sparked both skepticism and reverence. Could there have been hidden food? A massive sharing effort sparked by a child's offering? Perhaps. But again, the power of the miracle is not diminished by possible mechanisms. If God used spontaneous biological multiplication or altered the perception of hunger, the core truth remains: divine compassion moved through physical means to meet human need. God's touch transforms not only what is present, but how it is experienced. The miracles in the Bible, when viewed through the lens of science, invite a powerful reflection: God is not limited to the spiritual realm. He moves through molecules, storms, atoms, and time itself. And while science may one day offer plausible mechanisms, it will never capture the full essence of divine intention. In every miracle, it is the presence of God that matters most, not the method, but the message. That He is near, active, and sovereign over both the laws He created and the lives He redeems. The universe is not random, it is remarkably ordered, governed by principles so precise that they seem to whisper of intelligence, of intention, of divine authorship. From the spiraling galaxies to the microscopic architecture of a snowflake, the natural world bears the unmistakable imprint of its creator. Science, when stripped of pride and arrogance, becomes a map of God's logic. It doesn't oppose the idea of divine miracles, it actually points toward them. Each natural law, whether gravity, thermodynamics, or quantum entanglement, is a reflection of a God who not only creates but sustains. God is not separate from the laws of nature, He is the one who wrote them. He is the mathematician behind the constants that never change. The same God who commanded, "Let there be light," is the one who set the speed at which light travels. The same hand that formed the mountains also designed the tectonic plates beneath them. These laws are not independent forces. They are servants of the divine will, manifestations of God's order. To understand them is not to move away from God, but to move closer to how He thinks and operates. Think of the law of gravity: it pulls everything downward with a force so consistent that it defines our experience of reality. Yet, in biblical miracles, gravity was often transcended. Jesus walked on water, Elijah was taken up into heaven, and Peter momentarily defied physics by faith alone. These events don't nullify gravity, they show that the one who created gravity also has the authority to override or suspend it. And even then, it's possible these acts follow deeper laws we simply don't yet understand, divine physics beyond human reach. The beauty of science is that it constantly uncovers patterns and predictability. But what happens when something unpredictable, a miracle, enters the scene? It does not mean the system failed. It means something greater entered the system. A miracle is not chaos. It is divine control exerted in a way we cannot yet explain. For instance, photosynthesis, once a mystery, is now understood as a finely tuned conversion of light into life. Is that not a daily miracle? What we once attributed solely to divine mystery, we now recognize as an elegant process, and yet, its elegance remains divine. Ultimately, science is a lens, not a limitation. It shows us how consistent and majestic God truly is. Every formula and function, every law and limit, reflects His power and creativity. The more we explore, the more we discover that our universe is not a machine running on its own, but a masterpiece still connected to the hand of its maker. And in every miracle, we do not see a contradiction of science, we see its fulfillment in the hands of the one who designed it all. Few stories in the Bible are as mystifying as the moment when Moses encounters the burning bush, a fire that blazes without consuming the plant. In Exodus 3, Moses stands before a phenomenon that defies everything known about combustion. Fire requires fuel. A bush made of dry wood should be devoured in minutes. Yet here, the flames danced without destruction, a spectacle both mesmerizing and terrifying. Was it merely a vision? A rare atmospheric phenomenon? Or a divine miracle where God chose to suspend the expected laws of nature to deliver a message that would change history? Some scientists have tried to suggest natural explanations. One theory points to the phenomenon of spontaneous ignition, where certain desert gases, like methane or ethylene, could ignite in the right conditions, producing a flickering flame. Another possibility involves St. Elmo's fire, a weather phenomenon where plasma glows around objects in dry air. But none of these theories fully account for what Moses described, a bush on fire that was not being consumed, and more importantly, one that spoke with the voice of God. The scientific ideas may replicate part of the imagery, but not the message, the timing, or the transformation it ignited in Moses. The real miracle, then, may not have been the fire alone. It was the way the natural world was used by God to create an encounter. The bush became a divine appointment, a space where the eternal intersected with the earthly. In that moment, Moses was not just witnessing a strange phenomenon, he was standing on holy ground. The laws of physics were not necessarily broken, they were overridden by the presence of their Creator. God used the known to communicate the unknown. The fire didn't burn the bush, just as God's presence didn't destroy Moses, but called him into purpose. And this is the pattern repeated throughout Scripture. God often wraps his voice in nature. A pillar of cloud, a whisper in the wind, a dove descending, water turning into wine, each act, while cloaked in the physical, points to something far beyond it. Could it be that God doesn't need to destroy the laws of nature to perform miracles, but instead uses them in ways we can't yet comprehend? When he wants to speak, he can choose fire, not to burn, but to reveal. He can use light, not to blind, but to guide. What is miraculous is not that nature behaves strangely, but that it obeys a will greater than itself. So, was the burning bush a scientific phenomenon? Maybe partially. But the miracle was not just the flame, it was the voice. The calling. The command to remove sandals because the ordinary earth had become sacred. That's what defines a miracle, not just what we see, but what we feel, a trembling in the soul that no science can fully chart. Whether by combustion or command, the bush burned with a purpose, and Moses was never the same. The divine had spoken. And through nature itself, eternity had broken in. The New Testament overflows with miracles that astonish, inspire, and provoke endless theological and scientific reflection. Jesus healed the blind, calmed the storm, walked on water, raised the dead, and fed thousands with only a handful of loaves and fish. To the modern mind, trained in logic and empirical reasoning, these accounts may raise questions. Could there be natural explanations behind these supernatural events? Can faith coexist with science when faced with such extraordinary claims? The answer lies not in choosing one over the other, but in understanding that faith and science, when rightly aligned, harmonize in revealing the glory of God. Take, for instance, the miracle of Jesus walking on water, Matthew 14 verses 22 to 33. Skeptics have suggested that he may have walked on a patch of floating ice or that it was an optical illusion. But such explanations fall short. The event occurred during a violent storm, on the Sea of Galilee, conditions far from stable or frozen. More importantly, the miracle was witnessed by his disciples, who knew that what they were seeing defied everything they understood. Even Peter stepped out and briefly walked as well, sinking only when his faith wavered. This was not an illusion. It was a divine moment where physical law was submitted to a higher authority, one who created those very laws. Another example is the healing of the blind man in John 9. Jesus spits on the ground, makes mud, and places it on the man's eyes, then tells him to wash in the pool of Siloam. The man is healed. On the surface, it appears mystical. Yet the act also involves tangible elements, water, touch, clay, all of which science recognizes in various healing or symbolic rituals. Could there be a scientific basis for how certain minerals or clay compounds might aid healing? Perhaps. But what science cannot explain is the timing, the intention, and the command of Jesus that brings immediate restoration. It's not about the mud. It's about the voice that says, "Go, wash." The miracle lies in the word, not just the method. Even the resurrection, the cornerstone of Christian faith, has drawn scientific inquiry. Could Jesus have survived the crucifixion? Was it a case of mistaken death? The evidence, both historical and medical, overwhelmingly supports the fact that crucifixion was fatal and that Roman executioners were skilled at their task. What science cannot explain is how a dead man returned with a transformed body, appeared to hundreds, and ignited a movement that would spread across centuries. This is where science ends and divine mystery begins, and they do not compete. Rather, they reveal their boundaries. In each of these New Testament miracles, the natural and the supernatural are not at odds. They are entwined. God doesn't violate science, he transcends it. Just as a composer can alter a musical key without breaking the rules of harmony, God uses the natural world as his instrument, occasionally adding a divine note beyond our hearing. The miracles do not mock reason, they invite it to kneel before wonder. They do not destroy logic, they stretch it to its breaking point, and then gently fill the gap with glory. Faith does not require us to reject science. Rather, it asks us to believe that science is not the end of the story. Every law, every atom, every field of study reflects a creator who is intimately involved with his creation. And when that creator acts, he does not need to suspend natural order, he simply reveals a deeper layer of reality, one that faith sees before science ever can. Throughout history, humanity has pursued knowledge with relentless passion. Science has mapped the stars, decoded DNA, and split atoms, unveiling astonishing truths about the universe. Yet, for all its achievements, science reaches a boundary, a limit where data ends and mystery begins. That boundary is God. The Creator who spoke galaxies into being is not confined by microscopes or formulas. His essence transcends the observable, the measurable, and the repeatable. And while science is a precious gift, a tool to explore his creation, it is not, and never will be, sufficient to explain the fullness of God. Consider the very nature of a miracle, it is an event that surpasses natural laws. But the moment one tries to fit it neatly within a scientific framework, something essential is lost. Miracles are not mere anomalies or gaps in our understanding, they are signs. Signals from the divine that whisper, there is more. To try and explain away every act of God with a formula is like trying to trap the wind in a jar or measure eternity with a ruler. Science can describe the what and sometimes the how, but it cannot define the why behind God's actions. The burning bush, the parting of the Red Sea, Jesus walking on water, or rising from the dead, each of these contains elements that science can observe but not replicate. More profoundly, they point to a God who doesn't ask us to abandon reason but invites us to move beyond it. Faith begins where human understanding ends. Not because faith is blind, but because the human mind, vast as it is, cannot fathom infinity without the light of revelation. Moreover, every scientific law we know, gravity, thermodynamics, relativity, operates within a system that God created. These laws are consistent, predictable, and astonishingly elegant, reflecting a mind beyond comprehension. Yet, the one who created these laws is not bound by them. He can operate within them, or beyond them, because they are his. To suggest that science could one day explain away God is to mistake the creation for the creator, the map for the territory. Even the greatest minds of our time, Newton, Einstein, and countless others, acknowledged the limits of human knowledge. They stood in awe not just at what they could discover, but at the vastness of what remained undiscovered. The deeper science dives, the more it uncovers a universe that is ordered yet mysterious, complex yet beautiful, and in that balance, echoes of divinity resound. In the end, science is a servant, not a sovereign. It serves the pursuit of truth, but truth in its fullest form includes wonder, reverence, and faith. God gave us minds to think and hearts to believe, not in opposition, but in unity. When science tries to become the final answer to everything, it inevitably fails. But when it kneels beside faith, acknowledging the mystery it cannot explain, it finds its highest purpose. So, let the heavens declare the glory of God, as the psalmist said. Let the cells, the stars, the laws of nature bear witness to his power. But let us remember that no telescope can locate his throne, and no equation can contain his love. The Creator is not a puzzle to be solved, He is a presence to be experienced. And no matter how far science takes us, it will always stand at the edge of a truth far greater than itself, the infinite majesty of God. In the end, science may trace the footprints, but it cannot touch the feet of God. While it seeks to explain the how, only faith can embrace the why. Miracles, whether wrapped in mystery or theory, remain divine. Perhaps this is the greatest wonder, not that miracles defy science, but that even science whispers of a Creator far beyond human grasp. What if the unexplained is simply the signature of God,